Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back here to today's edition of Intuitive Angling, and really appreciate you guys swinging by the channel to watch today's video. Guys, today we're going to be talking about December 22nd, 2024, why it's a super important day for bass fishermen. I'm going to go over that in today's video, and I think you guys might find today's topic pretty interesting. Also, guys, before we get started, just real quick here, if you guys are looking for some Christmas presents or even for yourself a Christmas present, let me suggest this new Abu Garcia Zata tack reel. Guys, this reel right here, the proceeds of this, or part of the proceeds, goes to helping our first responders and our veterans through Tackle Warehouse. 10 ball bearings, man, I've been using this reel for several months now. You guys have heard me talking about it. Absolutely love it. It's got sort of that tactical color on it. So I'll put my Tackle Warehouse link in the description to this reel. And right now there's a Black Friday sale on them, so you can get them at 20% off between now and the end of November. So really good way to help our military and first responders if you want to get one of these. Much appreciated there. Okay guys, December 22nd, 2024. Some of you guys may guess what that is, and I'm going to tell you what it is, and then we're going to talk about why it's so important. December 22nd, or actually December 21st, is the winter solstice, and December 22nd is the first day of the year where the daylight hours start getting longer. Anywhere between a minute to 2 minutes, depending upon the time of the year. But guys, this marks a big transition in bass movement and bass behavior, and that's the topic of the video today, guys. I want to talk to you guys about bass movement and behavior based upon the variables that control that, and those variables are numerous. They're water temperatures, water clarity, daylight hours, which we're going to talk about a lot today, barometric pressure, wind direction, a lot of different stuff. A lot of people tune out about now because I found out in my YouTube videos that people would rather be entertained than educated, and I'm an educator, and this is one of the things that you really need to pay close attention to. Is like, if I'm talking about how to fish a certain lure or a hot color, that's going to help you out, but it's not going to help you out near as much as a video like today will, when you get an understanding of bass movement and behavior, which helps you locate bass and helps you determine the techniques that are best to catch them. Okay, when you talk about seasonal patterns of fishing, this is the true art form in fishing, because that's one of the things that the cheater box, forward-facing sonar, takes away from fishing. Is it takes away that whole need to understand seasonal movements and seasonal patterns of fishing. The true artist, as far as bass fishing being just a skill beyond anything else, is the understanding of how bass move and behave and their personalities based upon these conditions. Now, when you're talking about changes throughout the seasons, like spring, summer, winter, and fall, a lot of people equate that change to water temperature. Colder months, warmer months, they think that has a big impact on it. spawning periods, all that type of stuff. But guys, I can tell you, it's my observation, and it's been my experience in fishing, that the increasing or decreasing amount of daylight hours that you get in a specific month, it has a lot more to do with the behavior and the personality and the mood of the fish more than anything else. And that's why December 22nd is so critical, because this is the first day where you start getting the longer daylight hours. And the fish really start reacting to that, because in my opinion, when you start to get the cycle of the annual, just the rituals of the fish, when those daylight hours first start getting longer, that is the thing that initially signals those fish on an internal biological level to start preparing for the spawn, to start getting ready for the spawn. Now, they're not ready to spawn, but they're going to start for the formation of their egg sacs. And that whole process begins, in my opinion, about the time that the daylight hours start getting longer. And in doing so, you have a change in what the fish do, a change in the personality as far as the techniques and the baits and everything that they prefer. Now, one of the things that I have noticed as your daylight hours get longer and longer throughout the course of a day, it basically gets those fish feeding a little bit more. It gets those fish a little bit more active, and it gets them using a wide range and a diversity of different water depths and around certain type of cover in the lake. Because if you have different populations of fish in the lake, some fish may like to live in deep water, some fish like to suspend, some fish like to live underneath a boat dock their whole life, some fish like to live next to a stump or a grass bed. Every fish is different with that. But as these daylight hours get longer, there's more of an increased need and desire and movement to feed, especially on larger baits. One of the things that you're going to notice as far as the transition of the bass movement after December 22nd is there's probably about a 3 to 4 week window where the bass will prefer smaller baits. That time of year, that's in correlation with the bottoming out of the water temperatures. But as soon as that water temperature begins to rise and your daylight hours within a month have increased, significantly, several minutes, it depends on how, the time of month it is, but the daylight hours are increasing gradually. As those daylight hours increase gradually into the latter part of January and into February, there's a transition that those fish make towards preferring larger baits. I have seen this almost everywhere that I fish. It's like in January, I catch a lot of fish on small stuff like 3-inch jerk baits, small Alabama rigs, smaller profile crankbaits, little smaller swim baits. But February, with those longer daylight hours and the correlating slightly warming water temperatures, it all works together, in harmony. That's when they start going to the bigger stuff. The shad are at a full size then, the water temperatures are a little bit warmer, the fish are starting to get more aggressive, and then they start preferring larger jerk baits, larger spinner baits, 3/4 ounce spinner baits, full size jigs, larger Alabama rigs. Crankbait size can, come up a little bit. So it's sort of like, something that just happens year after year after year, and you notice sort of a reproducible pattern, based upon different parts of the country that you're fishing. And when you talk about establishing patterns and understanding fish movement behavior, one of the things that's the challenge for when we talk about it on the channel here is that every part of the country is different in terms of how those daylight hours and the water temperatures correlate into different type of bass movement behavior, because a bass in California reacts different than a bass down at Lake Okeechobee in Florida, and a bass here on Table Rock Lake in my home state lives and acts differently than a bass down at Lake Fork or Lake Sam Rayburn in Texas. So it's all relative to the specific local region that you're in, because there's certain aspects of bass movement behavior and feeding habits that change based upon the lake that you're at. But regardless, it's all the same thing. It's this constant cycle that the fish go through year after year after year, decade after decade, and it has to do with the daylight hours. I think that, like I said, is more important than the water temperature. I think it's more important than the weather conditions. There is, like I said, there is a correlation between water temperature and daylight hours that does influence it a little bit. But one of the things about it, I'll give you a prime example of what I'm talking about here, how daylight, the level of the amount of daylight in a period of time is more important than water temperature. Let's talk about the spring spawning season. It's like most people understand, or most people know, that most bass spawn when the water temperature starts to get around 60 degrees or in the low 60s. That's when you have a big spawn. And it's been sort of a common thought that like the first full moon in April or March, depending upon where you're at, when that water temperature gets about 60, there's a large movement of spawning fish. Now, I have not found this to be true, because one of the things that I have found about is like when the daylight hours reach a certain point and the sun is at a certain angle in the sky, it doesn't matter if that water temperature is 55 degrees or 75 degrees. Once that daylight time frame gets to be just right for the bass, that is when most of those fish spawn. I've seen fish spawn in water temperatures that people don't think they're going to spawn in, and I've seen fish spawning in water temperatures that were warmer where they thought they were all done. It's all correlation with that. So point of the matter is pay close attention to the daylight hours. Start monitoring how the fish react and move and what they prefer based upon the amount of darkness or the amount of daylight hours that you have in a specific day. And it's just another one of those things in bass fishing that makes it the most difficult sport in the world, because I can talk about things like, weather patterns and water level and water temperature and water clarity and daylight hours, but all this type of stuff, it works independently and together, and it's frustrating at times, and it's like there's not any one simple answer to it. It's like bass fishing is not as cut and dried as saying, okay, it's the second week of January, daylight hours are starting to get longer, this is what the fish are going to do. You have to have a foundation somewhere. So one of the things I try to do on the channel here is I try to give you a foundation to begin your search with, but always remember that foundation changes constantly with things like fishing pressure, sunlight level conditions, the intensity of the sun, weather direction, weather pattern, water clarity, water temperature, all this stuff together influences it. And that's why it's so challenging. That's what makes it so difficult to catch them at times. So anyway, guys, just pay attention to that. December 22nd, that's the first day we're starting to get longer days. I love it because I can't stand this time of year. November and December are the two suckiest months of the year, in my opinion, because they're the shortest daylight hours. I can't wait until November and December are gone. So hope you guys are well. We'll talk later.